Good to know. We're still in the 80-degree range in LA.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah, it was 82 the other day. I don't think we went outside.
Yeah.
Cry me a river.
I know.
Yeah.
Boy, it's been brutal. What's that? That's true. Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey, let's get started.
right.
Hey, everybody, and hello to our online audience. I'm Patrick from the Poison Pen Bookstore here, and it's always really exciting to have a debut novelist, although not a debut writer. But Joe Pan is here tonight. He's going to be talking about this wonderful book, Florida Palms, which is, man, it's getting all kinds of critical attention and all over the place. Rave New York Times review. So, gosh, welcome and
Thank you.
congratulations.
Thanks so much. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, I mean, there's so many things we can get into with this book. Tell us a little bit. This has the feel of a book that was probably percolating in your subconscious for a long time. And
Yeah, you could say that.
yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful combination of different genres, coming of age novel,
Yeah.
classic crime fiction, a little bit of horror trope here and there. Tell us about how this book sort of formed in your mind.
It's interesting because it came from so many different places. I grew up in Florida. I left when I was 18, but I was there my whole youth. And so a lot of these stories have some precedent in some real life events, let's say. Some of them do. And I always kind of had that in the back of my mind. I've been working on this book for roughly 2 decades, which is a long time to work on a book. But I published other books and worked on other books in the interim. And so, I have 5 poetry books and a couple nonfiction that I worked on. But this one I just kept going back to because it had so much of my childhood in it. And there were so many things that I wanted to say about the people in Florida, on the Space Coast of Florida specifically. And I knew I wanted this to be my first book, the first novel. And so it took a while. It took a while to get here, but I'm happy that I'm here now, and it's gone through like 100 revisions. That's the truth. It's probably been through 100 revisions. This thing used to be 600 pages long. It used to take place, half of it 10 years in the past and the present, and so the tension would really build between the past and the present, and I had to pull that all together, streamline it. I had to combine characters because people were very similar. Characters were very similar at times, and now I think it's in a really good place. It's been published. I'm getting some good reviews. I'm very happy for all of this, and people are loving it, and I'm finding my readership, which is just a pleasure as a writer, like to actually have something out in the world and people write you and just be like, I love this. I got this. This reminds me of someone. Or like some people really like the kind of lyrical passages because I write with some lyricism. Some people just really like the characters. I'm a very character-driven, not plot-driven writer, although this thing twists around a little bit here and there, and around characters, though. As the characters develop, and this is what I think. As character develops, plot develops, for me, right? And sometimes character develops because language develops. So it has this kind of starts from a place of language, moves into character, moves into plot. Yeah.
One thing I wanted to get into with you, you mentioned in the book, I think it might be in the acknowledgments, and also in an interview I read about what was it, the magisterial voice?
Oh, yes.
And James Allen McPherson.
Yes.
And I
haven't been asked about this.
Can
yet.
you talk a little bit about that? And the way it came across, the way you explained it in this interview, I'm like, wow, I never really thought about it that way. But yes, I mean, tell us what it is.
Have you ever seen a movie where there's a bunch of kids and when they speak, it seems like they know more than they should to some degree? Well, that's the magisterial voice to some degree. And for me and for James Allen McPherson, and this was coming from James Allen McPherson, told in workshop to a friend of mine who related to me, and I looked it up and I was thinking about this because I was already kind of writing in this mode, but I was a little bit afraid of it. And that is this, basically. If you, a person, a character, feels something, in fiction, you can say it. If you feel it, you can say it. There isn't the same kind of hindrances as we have in real life, where sometimes you just don't have the word, or you have that emotion kind of like locked up and you're not really sure how to present it. Or like you're in the shower later and you're like, I wish I had said this thing. Well, in the moment in fiction, to keep tension going, but also really to like give voice to what people actually feel, you can allow them to say whatever they want to each other. You can give that voice to them. And that's the magisterial voice in the way that I understand it. And I love doing that. And you don't have to do that at every opportunity, but there are times, and I think it's good to be selective. There are times when moments possess passion or tension to such a degree that you want it to rise above the other elements of the story and really capture something. And so you can allow people to kind of fulfill what they want to fulfill in that moment. And you can give that, and then you can bring them back down to their vernacular. You can bring them back down to the Space Coast, to the Southern drawl, or whatever else you want to bring them down to. But it's nice to have that elevation as a tool in writing. And so when I was writing, sometimes I was like, oh, well, 18-year-old, or sometimes like. But I've also heard this, and this is something that frustrated me, and one of the reasons I dove into this kind of like wholeheartedly. I've been told that poor people don't talk or think this way about my writing sometimes. Oh, poor people don't think this way. And I have to always be like, listen, people have an inner life. We all have an inner life. And we're all working through complex issues. And if you take a bunch of bikers or poor folks from the Space Coast and you give them a six-pack and you put them out in the woods and you put a fire there, what are we all going to talk about? What do you talk about? We talk about our lives. We talk about politics, we talk about religion, we talk about the universe, about what it means to be here. Why are we here? All of those things are human in this way. And so I would hear this, like, they don't talk or think this way. And I won't curse, and I'm now building myself to want to. But I would say,
please do.
No, I'm just like, it's like, no, like, there might be calibrated effects to how we get the information out there, and we may not always have the words for it, but the emotions are there, and I think we share all of this stuff. And I like to allow the characters to just fully express themselves in this way too, because I've been at those parties where people have expressed themselves in ways that I would not have imagined, and people that have, like, when I was young, like, spirited conversations where I just wanted to be part of it, and I was like, this is what we should be doing with our life. This kind of philosophizing, why don't we have this all the time? Because that's the stuff that really fuels art, right? It fuels everything. It fuels art. It fuels commerce. It fuels us being able to engage with one another. And so I want to give space, allow space for that. I think it's important.
Definitely. And the basic, let's talk a little bit about the basic structure of the book and who some of the main players are.
Sure.
It kind of, there are these three kids, at least at the beginning.
Yeah.
And it expands quite a bit.
Yeah.
But talk about these three kids at the center of the book.
Sure. So there's Eddy and Cueball and Jesse. I would say that triumvirate. These are the three kids. They just got out of high school. They don't know what to do with their lives. What they want to do is what every 18, 19-year-old wants to do. They want to party. They want to be with their friends. They want to have sex. They want to just and somehow get a lot of money in the process. And so, which is like a possibility. And so they have to work. Now, in the Space Coast, the way that it breaks down is there is the way that I set it up. And it was like this for me growing up, and it still is like that to some degree. It's like there were the engineers, but I set it up in a kind of East Egg, West Egg way, where there are engineers in NASA and Space Coast. Everybody's heard of that. We know about the launches and the rockets and all of this. There are plenty of books about it.
Is the Space Coast, by the way, as someone who's kind of Florida agnostic?
Yeah.
What is that a specific part
It
of the
is. It is. So
Atlantic coast?
Yes, it's on the Atlantic coast. It's Cocoa Beach, Cape Canaveral, where they used to launch the space shuttle. Yeah, that's the area. All four of my grandparents worked in one way, shape, or form for the aerospace industry, NASA, or the defense industry, which is very much located there. And that's where the money is kind of located. But then there's the outskirts. There's a lot more around it where there's not a lot of money. And so between my grandparents that worked for these big companies in one way, shape, or form, and my father, who was a surfer, who became a carpenter, who became a mason, who became a jail guard for 16 years of his life, like there was that, I got to see both sides of the coin there. And we lived on the other side of the coin. Like we lived in poverty, extreme poverty. Getting back to what I was saying, Cueball and Eddy and Jesse all live in that poverty. Now, Eddy is the person most fashioned after myself as a kid to some degree. His father has passed away. His mother this is during the Great Recession of 2009, is trying to make it, but she's kind of given up on trying to find a job. And so she has a rocket scientist boyfriend who kind of keeps her doped up in a way. She's no longer paying the mortgage. That's Eddy's responsibility. As a kid who just has this moving job, he's trying to pay for that. And then Cueball, his best friend, is the son of biker parents who both were in SoCal, got into a lot of trouble. Father ended up going to San Quentin, and then after he got out, moved to the Florida coast to start a new life. And there's another character, but we'll just focus on the kids for now. Jesse, Filipino American kid, he has two brothers that are there living with him. His father is also gone, and he is just trying to make it. He's part of the moving company as well. All three kids have taken a job in the moving company for the summer and possibly beyond, but they're just weighed down by, the sense of responsibility. They want to get out, they want to do things. And then somebody from Bird, that's Cueball's father, the biker, big, gruff, burly biker, imagine him, handlebar mustache, like full tatted, a big American flag across his chest with with a pair of eagles on it. He gets approached again by his former boss, who he took the rap for out in California. So San Francisco and in LA. And his boss has been, and I don't think I'm giving too much away here, biding his time to jumpstart a club, let's call it, that sells a new kind of amphetamine. And he has been doing research for years. Who will buy this? Who will sell this? How will it get made? There's a whole section which I put in the book, and some people think it slows it down, and other people are like, this is why I read. I've heard it all. But there's a whole section on how that came to fruition, and I loved researching that section. Anyways, that guy comes back into Caesar's life. Sorry, Caesar comes back, and that's Seizer, comes back in the Bird's life, and which pulls in the son, Cueball, which pulls in his best friend, Eddy. So everybody is being subsumed into this organization where they are all struggling in the Space Coast. They can't make money at the moment, and without options, what are they going to do? This is their option, as they see it. So they go into business. And some think they're going to get out quickly. It's not going to be that long. They're going to make their money. They're going to end it. And there it is. And just to push a little bit further, and then I will let you talk. I'm sorry. I'm just going to keep on going, brother. The kids that are the movers become the drug runners.
The shakers.
Yeah, they do. That's right. Yeah. They're joined by Caesar's two nephews, who are in their mid-20s, let's say. And those two nephews drive a van full of furniture, one piece of which contains this new drug. And Eddy and Cueball are the wingmen And basically, if you've ever seen Cannonball Run, right, where there's one guy
love this.
rolling with the beer, and there's another guy that when the cop comes, you just stomp the gas and make him chase you, and just you are dancing puppet or dancing in front of the cop. You are there to eat the ticket and get the hell out of there. You just want to make sure that the van full of drugs isn't stopped. Yeah.
Is that the Jerry Reed character in the?
Oh yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love those films. Those are great.
I know.
Jackie
It's been a while.
Gleason.
Yeah, Jackie Gleason, man.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Well, I wanted to ask you a little bit about what the drug itself is. Shank is the name.
Shank,
You
yep.
give it, right?
Yeah.
I was thinking about. Well, I wanted to get into why you chose to set it in 2000. This particular moment in time.
Sure.
2008, 2009.
Yeah.
The bottom falls out everywhere. Everybody's left scrambling.
Yeah, especially in Florida.
Yeah, really.
So I'll give you, here's a story, and it embarrasses my mother just slightly. I've asked her about it. I could tell the story. But my grandmother's house was this 3-bedroom, 1-bath, like 600 square foot place. It's really small. In this neighborhood, and at the time, I think it might have been worth $90,000 at the tip top. During the Great Recession, it was worth about $20,000. And the house next door was worth $20,000. The entire neighborhood could be bought up for pennies on the dollar, basically. Everything just dropped out. And you just had mass foreclosures here, right?
That's how I was able to buy a house.
Yeah, there.
We bought it in 2009. It was all the copper had been ripped out.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
It was bank-owned property. Anyway, I digress.
No, please. Like, let's have a conversation. That's it's funny because like in the screenplay version of this, that's happening in one of the houses. He goes in and just rips out the copper. But yeah, so the whole place it's on an economic downturn. One of the many. And one of the things about the Space Coast and growing up there that I went, one of the things that I recognized was this up and down in terms of sometimes government contracts would come in or wouldn't, it felt like. With the Space Coast, and engineers would leave, people that had the money would leave, or they just weren't spending money in the same way on like other parts of the county. And it felt like kids in those parts had nothing much to do. I have a brother in prison for that very reason, quite honestly. One of my brothers, he was a skateboarder. He was on a magazine when he was 14. He was really like doing well. And then about 15, 16, people stopped skating. I was a big skateboarder as well. Like, people stopped skating, and then what are you gonna do? What are you gonna go to the rec center? Are you gonna go to the biology club? Like, what else is there? There are those things, but they're not being advertised in the same way. And there's a lot of like pushback about like, oh, certain sports you can be part of if you're of a certain size. You know what I mean? There are a lot of things that just weren't there for him, and the money wasn't being filtered into those communities for the kids in such a way to keep them off the streets. And so you just go out in the woods and you start drinking. You start doing drugs. You start breaking into cars. And one thing leads to another, And, petty larceny or whatever becomes grand larceny.
Good, clean fun.
Good, clean fun. But, it was a lot of... like I said, I borrowed a lot from my life. Just as much as I could. But to tell my mother's story, like the $20,000 house next door, like to dig into some other priorities of people. Like my mother, I asked her if we could get the house next door to my grandmother's. And I was like, you know what? It's up for sale. The people have moved out. Like, we can buy this for you. You can be next door to grandma. And she didn't want to give up her house where we grew up. And I totally understood. I didn't want her to give that up either. That had dropped dramatically in value. And I was thinking, like, we're just poor people. How do we make money back? And, like, real estate was one of the ways. And I asked her, should we buy this house? Can we do this? Because I'm in a financial position where I can do this right now. $20,000. I mean, I can do this. And she said, hold on. And she flipped a quarter 3 times, and it came up tails 3 times. And she said, no, God doesn't want us to. And that faith, not just in God, which is not that belief that she had to go to an alternate source to like for that conviction, and that maybe she didn't. And we talked about this a little bit later, or maybe she didn't deserve that. Maybe she didn't need that. Maybe that was too much. Maybe we shouldn't be taking on too much because so much is falling apart. And like, what do you trust when everybody's pulling the rug out from under you? And that hit me. And I live with that sense of people not knowing what to do, not knowing who to trust, not knowing which politician to trust, and this sense that the bottom could just drop out at any point. And so what are you going to do? If money comes your way and is looking at you sometimes, like, I see why people just go, yeah, no, I'm just going to run drugs for a month or two or whatever. Sure. We'll see what happens because the other stuff's not working.
Yep.
Did that answer your question?
Totally. And actually, one of the things I wanted to get into is that, we mentioned there are all these different elements in the book. And in the background is this real strong sort of meditation on class in America, at least the way I read it. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yes. Yeah,
and the disparity between the Space Coast and the industry of NASA and and what's not too far away, on the other side of the tracks, there's that disparity that you already spoke about.
Yeah, and I just wanted to speak to that.
Yeah.
And its complexity, because it is really complex. It's not just like everybody's struggling and everything is terrible all the time, right? I found I had a lot of joy in my childhood. We were making skate ramps. We were jumping bikes. I could stay out. I mean, it was a different time. I could stay out 9, 10 o'clock and do whatever, and come home. And I felt like my friendships were really close. I had when I was really young, I had a real sense of community and fellowship with my church, which was a Baptist church. My father was a deacon in. That kind of fell apart as things do because the preacher ran away with the organist, and people took sides, and some other ministers and preachers came in, and it was just a series of faulty preachers, but things kind of fell apart. But and what I was thrust into, honestly, was the secular society in a way, and one of the difficulties of having such a close community then, and in a place where you have forgiveness. Like, you could just go into a church wherever you came from, whatever had happened in your life, and you would just face smiling faces that were ready to forgive you. And that is so powerful. And in the secular world, where's that kind of fellowship?
Bar.
A bar, yeah. Really? Are you I guess you are.
You walk into a dark bar, all of a sudden, we used to be able to smoke in them. It's just a bunch of accomplices sitting around you.
Yeah. Yes. And I guess there is. Oh my gosh. No, this is the thing. There is a sense of, maybe you just don't talk about it, or maybe you just talk about everything, but you don't know if the person next to you is lying about it. And it doesn't really matter. They're there with you. You're there together. There is something about, there's a bit of fellowship in that. I can see that, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Not in the same way.
No, what do you get? I mean, the thing is, like, what's the takeaway? We're all human. We're all suffering. We're all trying to find our way through the world. And you want people you can lean on, that you can trust. And sometimes that you've messed up, that you've had like problems, and you're just trying to find a way out of it. And you're looking for people that can be behind you 100%.
Right.
And most people are just not going to be behind you 100%.
No.
We can't, it's just, you almost just can't be, because you start taking on their situations and their problems, and then you're pulled in. And that's, when Eddy gets sucked into this whole thing because, like, he's looking after Cueball because it's his best friend. He knows this is wrong, and he's the last person to go in. He's like, guys, this is a terrible idea. And then Cueball's like, I'm in. It's my father. It's my family. I can't not be in at this point, because if his father's in, there's no way not to be in.
I like that, the title is one of those great ones that does double, triple duty.
Yeah.
You know, because what you first see Cueball, he shows this tattoo that he's gotten.
Yeah, which Eddy designed, and it's a sable palm, and Eddy had designed the tattoo. He had designed lots of different things. So he's also an apprentice to Bird, who in Bird's like illegal tattoo parlor in his house. It's converted garage. And so Eddy's sketched a lot of these things in sociology class and everything else. And he's been tattooing them on rinds of citrus.
Is that a thing, by the way? I didn't know that.
That was a thing when I was growing up. A friend of mine who was doing tattoos for a biker would do this in practice, and I would be with him. One of the reasons I don't have tattoos is because everybody around me had tattoos, and it was cooler to not have a tattoo. I was somehow the misfit. Yeah,
it's more of a rebellious statement.
That's exactly
now.
what it was. He's like, I'll tat anything you want, anytime. I was like, no, look at me. Like, I'm the standout amongst all of this ink. So, although I'm thinking about maybe getting a little, I don't know. But, yes.
You become so conspicuous too. I mean,
no, yeah, that's the thing.
It was the guy with the tattoo. You know?
Yeah.
You can clearly see it in the video.
Yeah. They keep it really small. And so, and then what happens as the club develops and gets bigger and all of these shadowy figures, the way it's set up is fun. One of the things that I had to do, this is interesting possibly. When I was writing this at the beginning, we didn't know a lot about meth labs. And at first, Shank wasn't Shank, which is this composite drug of many other things. I was writing about meth, and I was trying to learn more about meth, and I was researching it, and there just wasn't a lot on it.
Had Breaking Bad hit at that time yet?
No, this is the early aughts.
Okay.
When I started writing this. So Breaking Bad wasn't out yet. None of that stuff was out yet. And so I was just reading as much literature as I could to figure out how they made this stuff, where they made it, how they were able to manufacture it using a recipe using so many different things from so many different places. Like certain things came from like East Asia, certain things came from Mexico. Like some of it grows, some of the plants they use grow specifically in Mexico, and so you can it's just right there. And so I was building a case for how to like create this, and I was thinking like, what would I do? And so there wasn't a lot about like meth running gangs, for instance. Like, what did those look like? How did you distribute all of this stuff? Who did you have in the various cities that would do this, right? Were people storing them in apartments, and where was it all coming out? And so I had to kind of imagine this. And so I would literally just sit around thinking about how I would start a drug business, right? And be a drug czar and what I could do and how to do that, where I would go, where I would get this stuff, how I would hide it, how I would keep it like the temperature just right. Like,
did your internet search history raise eyebrows?
Yeah. Well, back then there were actually forums where you would ask people questions, and you don't know if it's just like Reddit. But back in the day, people would be like, "Yes, I make meth. How do you make meth, sir?" You have no idea if they're telling the truth, but some of them were, and so I was able to see that and corroborate that with stuff that I'd read in police files or something like this. And you were just like, oh God, this is wild. But really just had to come up with this whole thing. And then later on, when Breaking Bad came out and there's more of a general interest, a lot of, there was just more research. And so I could read more of this stuff. And a lot of it happened how I imagined it. It was just people making this stuff up. They're like, where do I store it? How do I break it up? Where do I store it? How do I cook it? What ingredients? How do I disseminate it? Right? Am I going to fly it in? Am I going to boat it in? Like, who's going to be the mules carrying this stuff across and all of this?
Were there a lot of like single wide meth labs all over the place? They were blowing up.
They were called mom and pop shops,
I
believe, right? And they people were blowing themselves up. I went to my friend's wedding in, where was it? Portland. And they had to leave their space because the person above them was like cooking meth. I mean, Portland and meth. Like, God, that was where a lot of my research took me, was Portland. Like, it just exploded. Wow. And so I have this thing about, like, Caesar goes and investigates himself. So my investigation becomes Caesar's investigation. And he goes to Portland, and he goes to Chicago, and he goes to these places where he sees, like, drugs being sold in bigger marketplaces and how they're able to do that, and where some of this stuff is starting, and where meth was starting, and where Molly was starting, and how that actually came from like the South and the West Coast over to the East Coast, and what that looked like. And where, like, how crack was disseminated was one of the things that I was looking about, just to see like where it started first and where it started going, and put Caesar in various places so that he could learn from the people that were doing these things, in order, because he wanted to build up. He was waiting for just the right moment, where, and what he was anticipating, which I write about in the book, was the next economic downturn, because I say, poor people feel the pinch of a slowing economy before wealthy people. Like, they know when things start to get expensive, just a little bit, here and there, and they can't get that for some reason.
You mean like now?
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. And your wages aren't going up with inflation, and things are just kind of stagnant. And what the hell's going on here, right? And you start to like pull in. And so when he starts seeing that in the larger economy, he sees the market turning bullish for his type of drug, which is cheap and easy to disseminate, and so he jumps on it. And that's kind of when he goes back and he gets back in touch with Bird and Del Rey and Gumby.
Yeah. No, we can't really get too much into the whole journey that happens. That's a great setup, though.
Yeah. I felt like bringing in Gumby and Del Rey.
Yeah, let's talk about. Okay. So this cast of characters
the cast
is so great. I wanted to ask you about Gumby, but first I want to ask you about one of my favorites, which is Del Rey. You know, he's sort of the writer, intellectual of the bunch.
I think he's most people's favorite character.
He goes off on these philosophical sort of digressions that are really fun. A lot of fun.
I love listening to him in my brain. This is one of the things, I mean, as a writer, where you just listen sometimes. And this guy Gumby started talking to me a while back, and I felt like he was smarter than me. I felt like he understood so much more of the land and the people and why he was doing a thing. He understood these codes, this code of brotherhood, how it had eroded over time. One of his first kind of speeches, he gives some speeches, is he looks out upon a crowd of people at a biker party, and he goes, look at all these like posers, basically. All these people, like this dream of the last American rebel burned down to like these burned out, beer-bellied lives, right? And he thinks of them like that. He's like, what are they even associated with? What's their commonality? American television and movies have endorsed their myth for decades, and they just held on to it. And then they like snatched this idea of a warrior culture from Native Americans and like brandished it like their own, and did all of these ridiculous things. And now they're just riding around and like pretending to be this thing, when in fact they're like, you know, grandparents and soy people and ex-cons found God and whatever else. He's like, where's the blood oath that kept us together? You know, where's the brotherhood? Where's the code? And that, to me, is so important to this book, is understanding that people live by different codes, and that's what clashes, right? And you can talk about the clashing of wealth, of classes, as also codes, right? And so that what people live by. Gumby has his own weird code. Del Rey lives by his own code, but really he wants to find something together, that togetherness, that brotherhood, that fellowship, that family, and he wants to have that survive again in his world. And I think that he really does want that, but there's an ulterior motive. If you have a family like that little group of kids that love each other and look out for each other and won't turn on each other, you could put them to work and you can make money, right? So that's part of the code, is that we are going to utilize you.
Well, that's how the mafia is all structured.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You have, and what's interesting about those tiers, those echelons, which is that comes into play, is like you have these kids at the bottom, and it has to do with a tattoo too. You have these kids at the bottom that are just kind of gophers. They're a little bit expendable, a little bit. One is the son of two of the major. There's two generals at the top, and they get into it, right? Bird and Caesar start to get into it, and that's one of the main tensions in the book. But at the bottom, they're working their way up, and if you have, again, this group of people that you can trust, and they stay in long enough, and they can't get out anymore, then they become the next, lieutenants, sergeants. They don't call them that in the book for very specific reasons, and I won't talk about that. I'll let you read it. But you work your way up, and they become the bosses later on. And they're just feeding money back into the old bosses. And that's just what you want to do. You want to branch out. You want to have these networks. You want nobody to know about each other too much. So if one group gets pinched, they're cut off. And so in a way, you're franchising to some degree.
Now it's I was looking at, it's kind of a 5-act structure in a way, or at least the way you have it set up. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that? How, the writerly sort of nuts and bolts of how you put this story together? You said, I imagine that there was quite some editorial back and forth about it.
Sure. Yeah. Like I said, this book has been through so many iterations that in the final one, my editor, Tim O'Connell at Simon & Schuster, who's one of the best in the world at what he does, him and I got together and we were trying to find out what groups of people were holding tensions at different times, what the through line was for each character, where did they start, where did they end, and all of these overlapping timelines and character tensions and just stories were going to be coming through. And we wanted to set it up in such a way that each section would kind of, pull into the next section, but be its own contained thing. And so that's what I was after. And it's a big job because you have a lot of people wanting and needing things and doing things. And so it was hard, just trying to find those sections that worked and what they were meant to portray, and what they were allowing. This is the thing, where they're allowing the reader to stop. This is one of the things that my book is different from a lot of thrillers. It is a slow burn. So a lot of thrillers, each sentence is a paragraph. It's like bang, 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 and you're at the end. And mine really is, a friend of mine called it in an interview, the redneck Godfather, and it really is that to some degree. I'm thinking about whole families, and I'm thinking about how all the machinations involved in that. And in order to do that, the pacing sometimes has to sit with people who are making major decisions. I wanted them to, because I didn't just want them to be tropes. I wanted it to start in a way where if you're reading this from the beginning, you're recognizing Florida Man, #Florida Man in it, right?
I was going to ask about that. I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah, so it starts off as a kind of trope in a way. Here are these crazy characters that are all at this party, and you're expecting it to go a very specific way. But then what I tried to do, and what I felt I needed to do to talk about the people in these places, and what I want to do, was bring them down to earth. And I do that through internal monologues, through dialogue with people, and show the kind of beating heart of who these people actually are. So you feed people the insanity, and then you slowly bring them to a place where hopefully they'll like them and understand them and want to be a part of their life. And then you just destroy some of their lives, and you hurt some of them, and they make terrible decisions throughout this thing. They make terrible decisions all the time because people I know, and myself included, have made terrible decisions for sometimes good reasons. And I just wanted to show them doing that. And I wanted to show some of the strength involved in making bad decisions because you're doing it for someone else sometimes. And I feel like that's such an underwritten thing.
And Del Rey, who you were just talking about, he's almost like the holy fool in a way.
Yes.
He
He
sort
is.
of provides the commentary,
He does.
comic relief
Yeah.
about the situation.
Yeah, Eddie's such a Hamlet kind of character, wavering back and forth. Cueball fails upward in horrific ways,
Yeah.
sometimes hilarious, horrific ways. He wants to get out, but he just keeps failing upward. And Del Rey is trying to bring people together in this way, but he's content analysis. He's there, like telling everybody what's going wrong and how they could go right, and telling the boss at times
Yeah.
how he's fucking up. Like just being like, what are you doing? Like, we have these things set up. Your ego and your habits getting in the way, and he'll just talk shit to him. And he's the only person at times that can do that.
He can get away.
He can get away. He's the fool, which is wonderful because I love to have the intelligence of the fool, that he is trusted and ignored, right? And belittled.
And he
used.
tells the truth.
And yet, yeah, the whole time, because I think he sincerely, as the writer, I mean, you're going to read it and you're going to have your own opinion. He believes what he's preaching. I think he wants people above ground, doing well, right? I think he loves love. I think he wants I think he wants people to be in good places. I think he recognizes that these are people who are not in good places, and things aren't going to get better unless he helps, unless he does something. But he's not above cutting and running if he recognizes things are going to go south, possibly.
Yeah. Now, let's talk a little bit about the point of view. It's pretty much consistent third person, right? Correct?
Yeah.
I don't think there's any first person in there, but
I do this. I dip. I get real close. I get close
It's
third.
really
So I like to
close third.
with Jin, who is Eddie's girlfriend, who plays a big role in this.
it feels like Eddy is the center of the book. Am I wrong?
No, I would say that he is. I think that his point of view is the main one, but I try to give each character a point of view. Most of the characters, like, we dip close to their reality. Even Jesse at one point, like, when he's thinking about this one kill, let's say, I don't want to give spoilers. We get into the reasons why and how, because he has a kind of internal breakdown of as a Filipino American with a bunch of white guys, has he become one of them? Does he want to become one of them? He's got the whole outfit. He's been doing exceptionally well. I'll just give it out a little bit. He's doing exceptionally well. And at one point, you see why he's doing it. I let the reader into his imagination to tell to show something else that's happening, to give a little bit of history about this thing that happens. And again, I don't want to talk too much about it, but something happens and I want to show that. But in the imagining of Jesse getting to that place, I wanted to show the complexity of his thought and why he's here and what he values and what he's making work for him. And I like doing that. I like the ability to just go into a character and see what they're thinking and how they're feeling about all this. I don't necessarily, for this book, didn't want any one-dimensional characters kind of operating on the bounds. Even Gumby, who we don't get into the head of much, I try to humanize in a very specific way.
That would be a pretty dark place.
I want to write about it so bad.
All right, so
I want to write about Gumby.
There's so much.
Done?
Well, no, but there's so much more I want to ask you. But tell him about Gumby, because he's very memorable character.
Okay, Del Rey, Gumby, and Bird. When they were kids, they all worked for Caesar in California, and then they all moved to the Space Coast. Gumby is a hitman. Gumby is a hitman who's known for killing people with blow darts and knives. Weirdly, I met somebody like this in Florida. Gumby has his own code. He's a creepy guy. He's hangs out in the corner all the time. You don't want to know this guy. He's like, what did I say? he was like a leather refugee from the 50s. Like he's got the little little Satan beard. He's got like this rat tail. He's got false teeth. That
Soul patch.
He's got yeah. You can see him, and he's got like false teeth, but he whittled one into a fang that he kind of hangs out. So he's a vampire. Whether he's a real vampire or not, I do not make that note. I don't, but probably not. But he's vampiric, but at the end, at the heart of his killing, he has a code himself, which is strange. And so his code is he loves animals. He loves animals more than people. But he recognizes that humans are above animals in the great chain of being. This is his own philosophy. This is not mine. So, in order to kill a person, right, and not feel anything for it, he has to sacrifice something he loves. So he goes out and kills an animal in order to bring that pain into his body that he can kind of later use and reach back into that shame when he goes and like kills somebody else. I get a little bit more into it, into the explanation in here, but that's what he does. And at some point, he goes searching for a panther, and he's a weird guy, but he's interesting. When he started talking, when I started like imagining that character, I wanted somebody super twisted. But one of my old professors I went to the Iowa Writers Workshop for poetry, and one of my old professors, Jim Gavin, one time said, there are no monsters. There are no monsters. There are humans that are monstrous, and if you're just drawing monsters, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Is everything just going to be good and evil and flattened out that way? He's like, no, try to humanize them. What makes them? It makes them more monstrous in ways when you can see the reality of the human in them. And so I was thinking about that when I was writing Gumby, and there was this part where Gumby's naked in a tree in the Everglades. He's been hunting this panther for a while. He's naked up there. He stripped himself down. He's been bitten by everything imaginable. And he's got a knife on one side strapped to him, and he's got his blow dart, and it starts to rain. And there's this memory in there of his grandmother who was made blind from rubella. And she would sit with little Gumby as a kid in an open window and listen to the rain fall in her garden. And the sound of the rain hitting the rocks would create the shapes in her mind. And so Gumby does this same thing, and he closes his eyes, and he's out there in the swamp, and he's listening to the rain come through, and it's hitting the palm fronds, and it's creating this whole landscape for him. And he hears the giving way of a palm frond as something moves through it, even amongst all the rain. And that's something that Gumby got from his grandmother. And that humanized him so deeply for me. And there's something, what was lost between that moment with that child and this scrawny, naked fucking killer hugging a tree, trying to kill one of the most precious, endangered creatures.
I picture kind of a Gollum-looking guy. Yeah. Maybe with a pompadour.
Yeah.
Something like that.
I think he's wiry and kind of sexy and just kind of like, I don't know, some people, but he's also, there's something creepy, just really creepy about the guy. Like, he's somebody that would stare at you for a while. There's another story in the book where somebody is like herding a possum, and Gumby rescues the possum and does something dastardly to the person that hurt the possum and keeps a souvenir of that person on his motorcycle. There's a little gosh, that's a little egg.
Hannibal Lecter in there.
Yeah. That's a little Easter egg, actually. I don't think I actually say where he gets this thing from. Well, no, I tell you what happens to this one person, and then he has this thing, but I don't think I draw the connection for you. But yeah, Gumby is an interesting character. I want to love him, and I think I do, but something about him got broke so bad. And so I'm just showing you the broken man trying to like hold on. And he knows what he is. He tells Cueball at one point, he said, if you want to see people who just, if you want to see what killing does to people that don't know a way to defend themselves or their interiority against this, I'll take you down to the VA hospital because there's lots of folks down there that can't get over this. Like, this will eat your ass alive.
Was there a little bit that you wanted to read with Gumby?
If you wanted me to, yeah, I'll
Sure.
read it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Give us a
Yeah.
taste.
I'll read you him out in the swamp, at the beginning of the swamp. So Gumby has to do this hit, and it's a big hit. And so he goes down to find something. Gumby's canoe cut a narrow path up through the golden green blades of sawgrass jutting from the inky waters. Above him, the heavens split along a seam, one half bruised a purplish yellow, where an amorphous cloud fell off a cliff of its own creation and swept the eastern sky with rain. To the west, a vision of unending grasses swaying eerily beneath a flawless blue. By late afternoon, he had left the snaking inland river and dragged the canoe ashore a small island hammock, avoiding the chicky outposts and trail ends as best he could. Heaving a backpack to his shoulder, he trudged awkwardly through the unforgiving mush and gelatinous banks of the lower basin to set up camp where the land thickened. For 2 days, the hitman paddled these opaque waters, alone and into the wild. By the third, he reached an uninterrupted slab of solid earth and abandoned his canoe to a hidden enclave to go about on foot, and by the fourth picked up the trail of the cat, a dark scraped mound consisting of soiled pine needles and black dirt covering a heap of scat, the feces wet and smooth and free of hair or bone, indicating a recent snack on organs, likely raccoon. When the animal fed weakly on the larger white-tailed deer or feral Spanish boar, the shit came long and thick. Gumby prodded the heap with a knife, crouching close as he chewed hard bits of jerked gator tail. He sniffed the soil, sinking his hands into the mud beside the tri-lobed teardrop tracks, undulating his body to emulate the stealth of a creature perusing the land as a king among the commons. It was the panther's presence of mind he wished to inhabit, the feline regard and prowess. Gumby toddled this way on all fours for a quarter mile before he lost the tracks to water and found them again heading northwest along an opposing bank where he settled in for the night. Without device or dog, he hunted one of the last hundreds of its species to strip from the golden panther its pelt for an untested black market value. He had ventured deep into the Everglades and up into Big Cypress for this and other animals in the past, but had yet to claim a panther, as had anyone, reportedly, since wildlife prohibitions began protecting the big cat under law. Befitting a personal belief that hunter and prey must stand on equal terms, Gumby brought only 3 knives and his blowgun for its magnificent claws and fangs, and little food, so that they hunted, in a sense, conjointly. Keeping without a fire, he opened his last remaining can of tuna and spread the crackers on his bag as the smeared dusk gave way to chanting insects and the yawning deep regret of space and wide exposure. In sleep, he dreamt of nothing but the chase. When conscious, he stripped the land to an empty expanse barren of all but 2 creatures and rapidly closing distance. Do you like it?
Yeah, he's got a little bit of leather stocking in him, doesn't he?
Yeah.
No, it's you can. This is a good way to segue into some other stuff, which was you can really see your background as a poet in
Thank you.
yeah, in that scene, and also the scene you were just talking about before.
Yeah.
So you got your start. You first started publishing as a poet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you
Yeah.
did 5 books of poetry.
I did. And I want to say, I self-published my first poetry book. And I started Brooklyn Arts Press with my first self-published book. And I'm so happy I did. I think it's a great thing. I love self-published people. I learned so much from them, and I just like to say that out loud, that I started that way. And I started with poetry. I was always writing fiction. I was always writing poetry, but that allowed me to like get my work out there, and I was able to send it off to all of these writers who I probably couldn't get a hold of unless I bought a ton of copies and sent them off. Well, I had the copies. I sent them out. I sent a copy to Don DeLillo, who wrote back.
Really?
Fucking Don DeLillo. I found, I'm not telling you how, that man's address. I'm not going to tell you. And then I wrote him, and he wrote back.
Is he in the greater New York area?
He's in the greater New York area. Probably, yes.
Okay.
He's out there with Pynchon somewhere. I don't know. But just to be able to write him, and I sent it out to a lot of poets too. But I did start off writing. Yeah. I mean, I started publishing poetry. I started publishing, obviously, a lot of other people's poetry. And I had my poetry published by other people, a lot of small presses. But yeah, I started, What do you want to know about it?
Well, and then you've had some award winners too, right? I mean,
yes, one of those
Augury
books. So in 2016, we became one of the smallest, not the smallest, press to ever win a National Book Award for poetry, and that was Daniel Borczewski's "The Importance of Becoming Human." The performance. I hope he's not watching. The performance of Becoming Human. Sorry, I've been driving all day. But that won a National Book Award, and it was insane. We had no idea. And we could only send out 1 or 2 books a year because it cost so much to even enter that contest that most small presses just would not do it. And so that was huge for us.
Did you have to ramp up production?
We had to
really
ramp up
fast?
production really fast. I was talking to so many other publishers who had been in similar situations as in terms of being a finalist and seeing, and if they won, I talked to like Grey Wolf, publisher of Grey Wolf, and some other places, and just like, what should I be doing? And they're like, everything, Jesus. And then we won, and oh my God, I didn't sleep for a while. But the money that we made off that, we were able to purchase Augury books, and we were able to put out some incredible books. And so I had Brooklyn Arts Press that was doing really well, and Augury books. And I got that because one of my friends was she didn't want to be a publisher anymore. She still wanted to be an editor. So I took over as publisher, and she stayed managing editor and chose the books and edited them. And that was just amazing. It was so much fun. And then I moved to L.A. And when I moved to L.A. 3 years ago, I decided to slow the publishing and focus all my energies on narrative writing. I honestly started thinking about how much I missed my grandmother, who had just passed away, and she was she grew up in the, did I say this already? She grew up in the hollers of West Virginia, daughter of a coal miner, and she could just tell these crazy paranormal stories. Like all her stories, they had this, they were magical realism. She had a bear dog that was half bear, half dog. She was chased home by a ball of fire. I can tell you all these Jesus stories that came. I mean, it's so many stories, and they were wild, and they just kept going. They were often really circuitous. And then my mother was a big storyteller, and my father told me horror stories from the Bible. That's where my love of horror stories came from. But I wanted to just write narrative. I wanted to tell stories, and I would do that with my poetry. If you go back and look at my poetry, a lot of it is like, I was journalistic and maximalistic in my poetry. What I love to do is read up on things and then just start to have language. Well, yeah, but then I would have language really start to I would just play with language for a while. And then the thing with poetry is poetry teaches itself and you its subject. That's the difference between poetry and fiction for me, is that I go into fiction with the subject. Mm-hmm. But poetry, I'll just start building it out of the words, mm-hmm. out of what consciousness is doing with a deep dive of words. And then suddenly it'll start to you'll get the amalgams of different things coming together in this really wonderful way. And you just proceed with that through language. Whereas with fiction, I very much start with like an idea or a character, and character follows that same kind of path for me as poetry, where like the character starts to investigate things, and the different attributes of what that character could be come together and form a person. They start talking, and it's really it's interesting and strange, but it's a lot of fun to perform, you know. But what was the question? Oh, the poetry. So I was working on poetry for a long time, and then we had a fire above us in Brooklyn, and when they flooded the place above us, the roof collapsed on all of our stuff, and we knew it was time to go. And so we moved out to LA, and I kept writing, and I found a really just incredible agent, and she helped me with the book. This manuscript I've been working on for 20 years. I have 5 other novels back home, and I'm going back to some of them. I've been writing fiction for a long time, but it was just my head was in poetry and art and the DIY milieu of Williamsburg, Brooklyn from 2005 till 2022. Yeah.
Do you know Johnny Temple?
Yeah.
Akashic.
Yeah.
Books.
Yeah.
That's
not well. I've met him before, but yeah. Oh, what a great. These small presses, man. This is the thing for poetry. American poetry lives in the small press world. It does not live in like the larger big houses. Like we make American poetry happen. And I love being part of that. I loved seeing people like
Is it as tethered to universities as it once was?
No, not in my okay, the poets are, because poets need jobs, and they
Right.
tend to be like adjunct professors. All your adjunct professors are poets. But
Or playwrights?
yeah, fair enough. But the actual publishing, less so. I've seen more universities and colleges buying up small presses that are going out of business, or just they're not able to make ends meet. I mean, the distributor, small press distribution, screwed over so many people last year, I think it was. They went out of business, and they took a lot of our money with them, and it killed a good number of small presses, and which is just sad and abominable. But they're coming back. You can't get rid of it because you can't get rid of poetry. Language at its purest form is poetry, and it's just going to resonate. It's gonna like bubble up everywhere, and you're gonna have people that want to publish it and put it out into the world. Yep. So you can't kill it, and it lives on incredibly, wonderfully in small press, in the small press universe.
Big news! You sold the book Florida Palms to HBO.
Yep, it was optioned by HBO.
Yeah,
so we're
very
working.
exciting. So what can you tell us about that?
So I can't talk too much about it, but I can talk a little bit about it and a little bit more now. Yeah, I can't even tell you. Like I could tell you the whole story. It's insane. They optioned the book. I won't tell you the whole story. Is what I'm saying. They optioned the book, and they have been just so magnificent to work with. They have been wonderful. I love every aspect of this process. I'm working with the writer Tom Bizzle, which a lot of people know as a fiction writer. Incredible fiction writer. Also wrote 3 episodes on the last Star Wars. Yeah, the last Star Wars and Andor, Star Wars, and it's just he's so smart and he's so much fun to work with. And so we've been working on the pilot together. He writes it, and then I bring the special sauce, as they're calling it. I'm the special sauce guy. Like the questions about Florida, about like how people speak, certain things that come up. I try to lend my hand in character development and plot development when necessary. And just this team I'm working with is really fantastic. Now I know this, and this is the truth of the matter. Most things do not get made when they get optioned. Like 99% of the things do not. Hollywood is in a terrible situation right now, so I don't know if it will be, but just to have that experience right now is a blessing. It's a fucking blessing. I just
Did the
can't
check
even believe
clear?
It. Yeah. Yeah. It took a little while for business affairs to get everything together. That takes forever. But yeah, no, it did. And I'm just this is the top, man. Yeah. I'm just going to fall straight down. There is no way with the Times editor's choice thing and HBO and just having my wonderful wife with me on tour for the next month and a half, and seeing some good friends of mine do exceptionally well. That's the best feeling in the world, when people around you that you're struggling with and trying to make these things, it starts popping off for them as well. Like, it's so wonderful. And I feel like that's happening with a lot of people I know right now.
So
Because
cool.
so many of us were struggling for so long, and it's just like click, 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 and all of this stuff.
That's really exciting.
It is.
Yeah.
One of my really good friends, Liz Sargent, she's a filmmaker. She just won the 10th annual $1 million award. They gave her $1 million to help make her film.
Wow.
Can you imagine? And now she's doing it in Florida with her parents and her sister, and it's incredible. Some of these things just happen, and you're just like, how does any of this happen?
Yeah.
And it just, because you've been working every day for 10 hours and working on the weekends and like just really like focusing every effort into this. And I've done that with many projects, and they don't work out at all. And you put as much effort, it seems like, into these things, and they just die.
Yeah.
But you don't. And that becomes part of you and that experience, and you just keep building and going. And every once in a while, something will just pop off, and you'll just get lucky, and you hit the right person. Like the editor is just like, yes, I get that. I understand this. It's not perfect. We're gonna make it better. But I love this.
They see the
I
potential
remember
in
that
it.
as an editor. I've done that. When people will send me stuff, and I'll just be like, I can't not do this. This is the most experimental poetry I know. I'm going to sell 5 books. I swear to God. I'm going to sell 5 books. I know this in my heart. And I have to do this. Because this type of poetry, this thing, this person, what they're doing, I've never seen. It's so incredible. The voice is there. They've been working on this, and it needs to be celebrated. And if I can find them a few more readers, like, my God, if I can find them a few more readers and occasionally a job, I mean, that's the thing too, right? You publish a book, and sometimes like that gets people work. That's real money. That's the other thing. Hollywood has real money.
How is the book? Have you had any specific to Florida reaction, like Florida media?
In terms of Florida media, yeah, to some degree. Like there are a lot of Florida bookstores that want to have us down there, and my friends down there are so excited. And
Books and Books, probably.
Books and Books, like, yeah, I'm Coral Gable. We're gonna do that. I'm gonna go down to I'm also gonna go to Key West, but we're just doing some signing stock there because there's not a lot of people in Key West in August. There's not the same types of crowds. It's not as hot as here.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. But they were like, Joe, nobody's going to be here. Like, come sign some books, and I'm going to go back next year.
Well, it's kind of like Phoenix in late July.
Yeah.
But
oh, my God. I forgot you guys have to live through July.
Yeah. Well, I realize we're running over here, but I know there are probably some questions. Did you guys have any questions, or maybe from our online audience?
Oh, wow.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah. So asked me if I had any other novels ready, any interconnected stories, future plans. I have 2 books that I'm working on right now. Another one takes place in Florida. And one is more possibly, I'm not sure if it's YA or if it's adult. But I'm working on those 2 things. I wrote, when I told you about the 600-page version of this, some of that stuff I took out, I turned into a second novel with some of the characters, and maybe that sees the light of day someday. I'm not sure. But I'm not sure if I'm ready to let go of them fully yet. I mean, I'm working on hopefully a season of this.
The director's cut, maybe?
Yeah. Oh, God, no. No, my editor wouldn't allow it. No, we went through... God, just trying to cut things out of this was like, oh, this is pulling my skin off. I wore that man down. I wore Tim down. I feel so sorry for him. I'm so thankful for him. But I don't think I could do a director's cut of this. But yeah, the 2 other novels. One that takes place in Florida. I'll just give you a hint. I'll tell you a little bit about it just briefly. It involves 3 soothsayers that could tell the future. Maybe not. and a man who learns that he's going to die in 5 days. Maybe not. There you go.
Wow.
It's good to have you here.
Thank you.
We've lost so many good authors this last year. Smart Crew Smith last week.
Yeah.
It's good to see new authors coming in.
Yeah.
It's a blessing. We need replacements.
I appreciate that. Oh,
We
well.
got some holes to fill. Come on.
I know. Oh, God, now I got to up my game. No, there are, I promise you, a lot of good authors out there. I do hope that a number of them are picked up by big houses. I see a great deal of them in small presses. Here's one. Go look up Alexander Boldazar. Look up the man who saw seconds. If you want a fast-paced thriller that's super fun, this is a small press book through Clash that sold 10,000 copies, and you all need to hear about it. And he's a magnificent writer. And there are a lot of really great writers out there. So I promise you, they're out there. They're writing their books.
You know what's great is a novelist like Percival Everett.
Oh, yeah.
Who's got to be one of the most non-commercial guys who has always just done exactly what he wanted to do, uncompromising.
Yeah.
At this stage of the game, he has this surprise bestseller.
Yeah.
I think no one would be more amused than he would be about this.
For sure.
That book, James,
Yeah,
which is
no,
a fantastic
James,
book.
Yeah. I mean, but he's always just been an incredible writer and
Oh,
celebrated at like a literary level in
Yeah.
this way. But to have that breakout that becomes a commercial success as well, like critics adore this man. Like, but to see this like hit in such a big way too, capture the zeitgeist.
Yep.
You're just like, hell yeah, man! This is what you want to see. I love it,
Yeah,
and we
I do
need
too.
to celebrate that. Celebrate our authors, absolutely. Like, bring more attention to people. Like when you're talking about your favorite TV shows, which we all do because we all have favorite TV shows. Slip in your favorite book of that month. Slip it in the conversation. Tell them what you love it, because like people want to write books. They really do. The psychological investigation that you can do in books is in the interior investigation is so much more than what you can get in film or anything else. Even in poetry, again, you're close to the language, and language is consciousness to a degree, and you can play with that, and that's really wonderful. Excavate that, but at the same time, like fiction, you can just get into a deep character mode and fall in love. And you don't even need a plot sometimes. I followed characters all the way through it and didn't give a damn what they did.
It becomes more of a subversive activity too, because it's like the pressure all around you is to have your attention slurped away by all these little online, sound bites and blah blah blah, bombarded.
I mean, honestly, I love candy. Who doesn't? Who doesn't like I love the Instagram. I love seeing all my friends and their cats and the weird shit they throw my way. I love seeing Facebook and seeing like everybody's family and the vacations they're doing. TikTok is just it's goofy and hilarious, and like those things are great. I mean, maybe they are rotting our brain, but so what? Like a little bit of rot. I mean, we're rotting our brain with so many things. I watch 80s horror films religiously. Tell me I'm not rotting my freaking brain, okay? At the same time, I love deep connection, and I know everybody does. And we all have our family and friends or whatever that we go to, or our animals that we go to and we give love to. Yeah. And we're not going to replace that. That's not going away. It's a human thing. Right, we can rot our brains with stuff, but what's interesting is like we have all of this media, and yet that we have those. There are moments of elevation. There are things that are elevated media, and we can go to that elevated in ways where people took their time to make the thing and the craft, and you see the brain working, another person's brain, all the way through. You feel it. They bring you into their consciousness. And that is amazing. And when you're reading a book, what that feels like. Yeah. You're mesmerized. And you're not going to get that out of TikTok. Go to TikTok for what TikTok's for. Live your life. I'm not going to shit on these fucking things. People love them. My nieces love them. I love them at times. But I love books. I love great films. I love shitty films too. My God, I love horrible films. I would tell, but I'll also talk to you about why Korean horror films have elevated not just the genre but films. This book takes some stuff from Korean horror films. I will talk about it. I'll just tell you really quickly. I'll give you half a minute and then I'll let you go. Like, one of the things I love about Korean horror films, certain Korean horror films, it will start off with something that's a comedy. Like, this book starts off as a kind of like, oh, look at me, I'm Florida man, I do weird shit. And you'll see buddy funny cop movies. And then suddenly in the second act or whatever, there's a little girl that's introduced, and it's like one of the cops like kids. And the cop's been investigating something that's happening out in the town, right? There's something little paranormal that's happening. People are dying, but it's kind of on the outskirts. And then the little girl, you fall in love with the little girl, and the little girl gets sick, and it humanizes. And you're there with the little girl, and you start to realize, you know what? No, this is a father-daughter story. This is really beautiful, and you fall in love with the little girl, and then the third. Some paranormal wacky. Once you've been sucked into this whole narrative, they get you with the joke, they pull you in through the human, right, response, and then you just twist the shit out of it. And and then at the end you're like, no, what happened to the little girl? Oh my God, what the hell's happened to the father? What are you doing? And then there's this whole universal thing. Like, you can talk about anything. You can be pulling in like the fate of man. You could be pulling in like where love is like gone wrong. You can pull in all of these giant tropes and squash them. You can subvert whatever you want and and we're in for the ride because we're stuck.
Zombies?
Yes, zombies. Exactly. Pull in zombies. Pull in like any kind of mythical creature you want. And I'm there because you've already got me. You did this wonderful thing. You gave me the joke. You taught me to love somebody. And then you started hurting people I care about. And like, I'm in. I want to see if they make it. I'm rooting for them. That's what I try to do. This is a Korean horror film.
I think that is the absolute perfect note to end on. Thanks so much, Joe. It's
Thank
been
you.
a real delight talking with you. Thank you all for coming out tonight.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks,
Yep.
everybody online. Thanks a lot.
Do we miss any questions? Cool. Great.
Awesome. Thank you.